Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Agents to Owners podcast. I'm super excited today to have owner of Bison Ridge Insurance out of Coweta, Oklahoma, Mr. Maverick Pitchford. Maverick, thanks for being here. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, man, I'm super excited. I love being able to talk to other agents that are on the same journey as me. So I'm very appreciative of you taking some time and hearing me out.
Yeah, I'm excited to chop it up with you because I've heard you on a couple other podcasts. So I kind of want to dive deeper in a couple of the subjects that you talked about. So let's, you had about a 3-year stint with Farmers and kind of figured that wasn't the best route for you to go. So let's start there with you on what led to this decision to go to the independent world.
Yeah, so I kind of always knew once insurance was a viable option for me that independent was the way I wanted to go. I've said this in other podcast stuff, but I got into insurance at like 22, so I was real young.
Yeah.
Jumped into agency ownership pretty quickly. I think I was in agency ownership within the first year of being in the industry at Farmers, and so I knew that owning a business is what I always wanted to do, and secondly, that independent was the way I wanted to go. So I had a conversation with my wife and said, "Hey, listen, I think we were 24 at the time. If we're ever going to take this jump, it's now." And so I said, "Give me 5 years and let's see if we can make this work." And we're almost 3 years in, and it's definitely working. And so it's one of those things that independent is definitely the way to go. But I'm extremely grateful to Farmers or any captive world out there that they were, taking a kid who, didn't graduate from college and giving him an opportunity to get into business and learn the ropes. I couldn't have done it without them, but I'm extremely grateful that I made the switch to independent.
Yeah, something that came to my mind. I remember saying, so I started with Farmers as well, and I spent nearly 9 years there. And I remember saying then, I think I got started when I was roughly like 28, and I loved it, and instantly loved the business, and the opportunity that it was provided. I remember saying, I wish I would have started this sooner. Well, that's you. So you got going on that journey, and even by you going, I know you're in your mid-20s now, by you getting going, and it's always a struggle starting out, especially starting out scratch. It's something everybody pretty much has to go through unless you buy in or your family's involved. So it's to go through these growing pains now where you're at. It's a lot of us are really envious of that. So it's a perfect time.
Yeah, I like whenever guys like you say that, because there are some days where I'm like, what the heck am I doing? I need to remember those comments because it's easy to lose sight of what you're doing and the reasons why you're doing it when there's hard days, and we all have them. So
it will be worth it. And I've heard enough from you of the things that you're doing and the work you're putting in. It will pay off and you can make it whatever you want. That's the beauty of it. And you have a long journey ahead of you. So it's I'm envious in a way
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So it's congratulations. I'm happy for you that you got in that early, because most of us, and you hear the stories of nobody, this is not a first. Very few people. Jerry Connery, who I just had on the podcast, he was one of the only people that this was his plan.
Wow.
Otherwise everybody backs into it. It's a second career. So for you to take it, you're well ahead of the curve. So
yeah, I definitely didn't ever foresee myself being in insurance. I tell almost every client, like, hey, listen, I know insurance is boring. It sucks. You don't want to talk to me. I understand that. But let's make this as painless as possible. Let's get through the process and get this taken care of. So
yeah. So let's talk a little bit about so you had a little bit of experience. You got to know the business with Farmers. You jumped over into independent. Talk about what that transition was like.
So it's a learning curve, kind of like you said, right? No matter what. I do think looking back that there's just not enough information out there on it. Like I remember sitting at my desk. I was still officing out of my house, had my Farmers agency, and I was like, trying to find like just anything on independent, and I could not find any information. I mean, searching blog posts, searching forums, all kinds of stuff, and they're just I couldn't. Maybe I was looking in the wrong spots, but I just couldn't find much information. And that's one thing that I don't know how we as an industry could change that, but I don't know why it's that way, but I do look back and think that was one of the difficult transitioning parts, and that then led into my fear of I'm going to be completely lonely. not lonely in a sense of like my life, but lonely in the sense of the business realm
Yeah.
of like, I'm not going to have anyone to talk to about this. I'm not going to, have anyone to bounce ideas off of, those type of things. And so I made it my mission, my kind of calling card is I'm going to ask, my elder statesmen, my elder, insurance agents that have been around the block for advice. Because
Yeah.
as a 24-year-old, when I started this agency, there are a large portion of agents that have been in the industry on the independent side longer than I had been alive. I would be
Yeah.
dumb. I would be so stupid not to message them or Facebook or call them or reach out to them and say, hey, can I just have 15 minutes and talk to you about what your transition was like, what you're seeing, how you see, because we all know we've seen agents start and we've seen agents flame out. And so one
Yeah.
of my questions I always ask them is, what is a leading factor that you see with new agents, why they flame out? And
Mm.
you take that, you write that down, and you say, okay, well, I need to watch out for that. I need to make sure I don't do that. And that's been something that's been really helpful during the transition period.
That is so huge, and I would encourage you and everybody else listening to intentionally interact with your peers.
Yeah.
And I know I've heard you say before, and this is I started doing the same thing, was you see somebody, whether it's on LinkedIn or whatever, hear somebody on a podcast, and you talk, maybe they talked about a specific, whatever it is, a process or marketing or whatever it is, reach out to them.
Yep.
And for me, what I learned, one, I learned so much from connecting, and it just inspired me,
Yeah.
and gave me energy,
Yeah. No, I
and
agree completely. And there's so many ways to cut this cake. Like we're not all going to build our agencies the
no,
exact same way. However, though, whenever I talk to someone, I can take a little piece of nugget and add it to my recipe for the agency I'm cooking up. And so
yeah,
I think that that's really important to do. And I think what I've noticed is that if they are on LinkedIn or they're on a podcast or they're on one of the big Facebook groups talking about it, most times they're going to be willing to talk to you because they're
yeah,
already putting that information out there. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like I've not had any of them say no. Like they're
yeah,
already out there saying it. So like they're not going to be the type of guys that are like, oh, I don't have time to talk to that person about that
yeah,
because they're already going out of their way to share the information. So
yeah. It is amazing how many people in this industry are helpful, completely selfless.
yeah,
It still amazes me.
yeah, it's crazy.
So when you first started, made this big jump, how did you gain access to markets? Did you join a network? Did you find direct appointments?
Yes, I'm part of a network. I'm part of Horizon Agency Systems out
Okay.
of Colorado. I've been really I've been really grateful for their partnership. They've gotten me all the access I need, and so been really really grateful that I found them. I Speaking of forums earlier, when I said I was trying to find information, that's how I found them. I found the owner. His name is Trout. Is his name? He happened to post something on a forum that I was on. I couldn't take you back to the post. I couldn't take you back to
Yeah.
the forum. I searched him real quick and called him. Got on a call. I interviewed probably 5 or 6 different
Oh,
networks,
you
and
did?
yeah, I definitely did my due diligence.
Okay.
I went through about 6 different processes and kind of decided that their contract worked best for what I was wanting to do. So
Yeah. What did you like about that network? I like to ask that question. I mean, what you found that fit best for you
yeah,
with
their contract's
Horizon?
amazing. Their
Okay.
contract, I can get out whenever I want. There's no buyout. Those type of
Okay.
things are really, really important to me because I knew that, like I said, I started young, and so I know that I have a long runway ahead of me. And when I have that long runway, there's going to be things that change, right? I'm going to have different aspirations. I'm going to, my business is going to grow in different directions that I can't even foresee right now. And so I need to have a contract that I can get out of if I need to.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Big thing. So I heard you say on a recent podcast, your plan is to grow by 100% in 2024. Quite a lofty goal. I
Yep.
love it. I love it. So tell us how you're going to get there.
Yeah, so I actually kind of had a realization a couple weeks ago that I've been extremely blessed, like I said on some other podcasts, and oversaturated with leads. And
Mm.
when you have that, when you're writing a lot of business, it's easy to just do that and not worry about everything else. So I quickly fell into not knowing my numbers very well, my
Mhm.
KPIs, knowing what I needed to get. So I set actually the exact same goal last year in 2023, and I didn't reach it. And
Yeah.
looking back, I'm wondering why didn't I reach it? Well, I didn't reach it because I didn't have a planned out goal. I didn't know my numbers. I didn't have KPIs that I was going to track every day and every month and every quarter, right? So that's my goal for this year. I'm knowing my numbers. I want to know, I have the goals that I want to write for the year. I've broken them down by month. I've broken them down by day. And then I have 3 different KPIs that get me to that goal. There's simple KPIs, obviously how many quotes I need to get out the door every day, how many policies I need to sell every month. And then my big thing for me is COI meetings. So centers of influence meetings. I
Yeah.
want to have 4 a month is what I want to have, because if I can have 4 a month, then I know I'm going to at least probably meet one of those that are going to start sending me some business. And that's just another way to create more leads.
Okay. How are you generating all these leads?
Yeah, so we've been extremely blessed. I'm in a small community, and so
Yeah.
I do not take that for granted, in the fact that I'm in a small community that my in-laws have been, pretty predominant people in the community for a long time. My wife's a teacher here. My wife and I both went to high school here, played sports, those type of things. So I think that plays a lot into it, because I'm already a familiar face, right? I'm not going in and talking to people who don't know me. And just being visible in the community is a really, really, really big deal for me. So, going to sporting events and shaking hands and, not actually, but kissing babies, right? Shaking hands,
Yeah. Yeah.
kissing babies, those types of things. We're super involved in our youth group. And so, just being available for the community to see us, and then it goes a long way. And then also the social media aspect, right? In a small town like ours, uh, there's not a lot of insurance agents who are pushing really hard on that aspect. So
Yeah.
even the little bit of push that I do goes a long way.
So you're starting to, I mean, you're getting seen a lot,
Hmm.
and then it kind of snowballs, right? I mean,
Yeah.
people that have had an experience with you
Yeah.
or whatever, you get referred.
Yep.
Yeah, that's huge. So let's take that from there. And if you have all these leads, and I know you said, um, previously that you had to kind of turn it off. Well, how do you
Mhm.
turn something like that off if they're all referral based or if they're contacting you?
Yeah. Yeah. So the referral base are the ones that you can't turn off.
Yeah.
The ones I have are, I've stopped pushing so hard on social media and those type of
Mhm.
things. I was doing a lot of giveaways the first 2 years,
Yeah.
and those were extremely, extremely successful for our agency. And so I've stopped doing those, and then we just work the referrals that come in, which is the way we want to be eventually,
Yeah.
anyways. And so we use that first 2-year push, and then now we're working just on a referral basis, and it's been extremely successful. So we're seeing, I mean, more leads, than I've ever had before come in every month. And so, just have to stay diligent with working them, because there's ultimately nothing you can do about those. You can't say, "Hey, stop calling me," which you don't
Yeah.
want to do that anyways,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit of you're the you know you're the only producer
yep,
in the agency right
yep,
now. And if you have that high influx of leads, let's talk a little bit about your intake process with all those, because you have to have a streamlined process.
right.
And I know that you like your tech system. So let's
Mhm.
talk about what that looks like. You get a referral from your church.
Yeah.
Walk me through what it looks like for you to get a quote.
So one thing for me is I want to make sure not only am I going to be beneficial for the client, but I want to make sure the client's beneficial for me. So being very selective with who I work with. You hear people preach all the time, having your agency minimums that you're not going to sell under, those type of things. But also, if it's someone who is not tech driven, if it's someone who doesn't want to use Canopy, doesn't want to do all the stuff, we're just not going to work well together. And so it's just having that conversation and saying, hey, I appreciate you reaching out to us, but we may not be the best fit for you. I think that's really important if you're gonna, you need to make sure you qualify those leads first.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but not necessarily, it's, and I like what you've said in the past too about that, about being selective, and that you want to grow, you want to grow the right way,
Yeah.
avoid problems. Um, and so you reference Canopy. Is that kind of the process of someone says they're interested, you send them the Canopy
Yeah.
link, and that's how
Yeah.
you
So,
kind of
so
get.
my whole process is I get their information into Agency Zoom. I have their name, phone number, email. Shoot them a quick text. It's a template I have in there that just says, "Hey, thanks for reaching out to us. Who are you guys currently insured with?" It's a simple question like that. One short question. They answer back, State Farm. Okay, awesome. If you use State Farm's online portal or their app, here's a link you can use to fill out the Canopy Connect link. This allows us to provide the most comprehensive quote, make sure you're not missing any gaps and those type of things. And then they fill that out. We get it punched into Agency Zoom, and then they're down the quoting portals from there. So
Yeah. Okay. Um, and I've also heard you say that maybe with this, large growth, I think your intention was to add a producer or two this year.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah,
that
so my
something you're
my main goal, I've actually kind of shifted it a little bit.
yeah.
I still want to have producers per se, but I'm going to go the VA route. I think is the way I've
Okay.
decided. I have one full-time VA now, and I'm going to have another one by this summer, the end of quarter two, and then hopefully the start of 2025, we're going to be looking to add an in-person CSR. So that's kind of
Okay.
our growth process right now, because I'm completely okay being the
Yeah.
face of the agency, making all the calls, making all the Loom videos, those type of things. So having those VAs on the backside working the quotes, I'm going to have one full-time VA working all quotes and one full-time VA working service, and then I'll be the salesperson per se. So
Yeah. I think that's smart. I
yeah.
really do, because you have to have somebody that's servicing it. So,
Hmm.
um, everybody can go their own path, but I think that makes the most sense
Yeah.
personally.
Yeah.
How are you utilizing your VA?
So right now is she's actually only been on with us for about 2 months, and
Okay.
so we went through a full training process on the service side. So I taught her all the service things I wanted her to do first, and then now she's getting into the actual quoting process. We're using a myriad of different technologies that I'm kind of tech stacking together for her to make her some game plans, and then we have a daily call, and kind of have a breakdown of what we do weekly. So Monday we introduce a new topic. Tuesday we go over the topic more if needed. Or Tuesday and Wednesday she'll shadow me, so I'll do some of the processes with her on Loom or on Zoom. I'm sorry. And then Thursday and Friday. Thursday she works on it by herself. Friday we go over it together, and if I feel like she's good to go, then I get that seal of approval, and that's her task to do now. So doing that for everything every week, and it's a little bit more painstakingly slow, but I know for sure that she knows how to do the stuff that she's teaching, and she's been
Yeah.
incredible. She's picking stuff up incredibly fast, so
And,
it makes it really
and
nice.
it takes time to
Yeah,
expand their role and for them to
yeah,
learn it. I think I heard you say in the past that you had a VA previously and it didn't
mhm,
go so well, and you
yeah,
described yourself as a bad teacher,
yeah,
or maybe your wife said that. I can't
yeah,
remember.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
What did you learn from the first time that you added somebody on, to this to now that you were better prepared?
Yeah, my wife definitely is the one who told me that. She told me, she said, because she's a teacher by trade.
Yeah.
She was like, "You are awful at this. This is
Yeah.
not what you're good at." So I had to take that into account, and so I've now made a Bison Ridge playbook is what we have, and
Yeah.
I have it broke down into everything I've taught her. And on that page is a one-page screenshot. She has a Loom video that she can follow the task for, and then I'm using Tango to do a step-by-step guide. That way, if she's visual, she can watch the Loom. If she wants to do it with the Tango guide walking her through, she can do that as well. And then we make sure she has all the services she needs to complete that task with linked hyperlinks to go to the sites with the logins. So just trying to make it as easy as possible for her, because it's obviously not my it's not my strong suit teaching. So I'm trying to be overly done.
Yeah, don't be too hard on yourself. I think that's what most of us go through. I mean, I self-admittedly, my training and onboarding was awful for
Yeah,
years.
yeah,
And and until I really sat down and said, "Okay, what do I need help with?
right.
And then what do they need to do?" And you really have to, basically pretend someone's a 5-year-old, that you need to explain every step.
Yeah, right. And that's why I'm using the multiple prong aspect with the looms
Yeah.
and the tangos, because it's like, um, she may learn differently than I do, and so I want to make sure she has every resource she can to get to learn those processes.
Yeah, and I think it's just keeping it simple,
Yeah,
because everything is new. I mean, and you
yeah,
went through it yourself,
yeah,
that the learning curve of all these different companies
yeah,
is massive.
yeah,
And I even made the mistake, with one of my new hires, that I started explaining all these systems that we
mhm,
use, and Slack and Agency Zoom,
yeah,
and you could see just deer in headlights.
yeah,
And so you really have to introduce all these brand new words, and what's light speed,
yeah,
and so it's kind of what finally I wrote everything down. This
mhm,
is what this system does. This is what
yeah,
this system does. This is,
yeah,
you introduce it, but
yeah,
there's so much. So you really have to take it slow with any new hire. And, with whether it's your next VA, you'll be that much better.
Exactly.
With your next employee, you'll be that much, you'll be that much better and prepared. It's a
Yeah.
process, man. You just have to go through it.
Yeah. And something you just said that it's one of those things that when someone says it, you're like, oh, that's so, yeah, why didn't I think of that? So I was on a call with my buddy Billy Wagner, and I was talking to him about his processes, and he was like, "We do a tech stack day where we go through and explain the tech stack." And I was like, "Why haven't I thought of that? Like that's so simple, it's so important, but I just never did it." So we had a whole 2-day process where I took her through every tech that we use and say, "Hey, this is what this does. You may not use it right now, but I
Mhm.
want you to know that whenever you do get to quoting, what all the processes are and all the tech stacks are." So I think that's important to build into your training process because I didn't have it. It was just an oversight that I had. So
Huge. And I think it's huge to be transparent,
yeah,
which I didn't for the longest time. Just so you can understand how all the dots are connected.
yeah, yeah.
Even with the automation that we set up, I've even made sure and just explain, even though if someone isn't a part of our, kind of sales team,
Hmm.
that they understand that there's automation that go here and that we move when we move from, one bucket to the other in Agency
Yeah.
Zoom, that it stops this automation. So just everybody kind of understands
Yeah, because
a
I feel like
little bit.
if they know where you're coming from with your thought process and like why you're telling them to do it this way, if you can give them a little bit background knowledge, it's easier to comprehend in their head. That's what I think.
So when you said you're most likely going to add another VA,
Mhm.
and now will that role be the same, or will they be handling a different
So I
task?
would like so right now my VA is doing sales and service. I'd like to move my current VA into a full sales, or I say sales quoting role. Right, she'll be
Okay.
doing all of our quotes. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
and then the new VA is going to come on and take on the servicing task. So doing
Okay.
our post bind documents, those type of things. And my goal is I want to eventually have multiple VAs and have ideally the VA that I have right now, her name's Samnaj. I have Samnaj as my VA manager, and my other VAs are going to refer to her because then that's just one more person between me and them.
Yep.
Not to say I'm not going to talk to them,
No.
but it's a way to set up a team underneath me that I don't have to be, if they have a question, they can go to her first. That way, if I'm at a meeting or something, they're
Yep.
not just waiting on me to answer them. So I think that's going to be the way we we structure our team.
And that's really smart, because then they know that they can go to someone else
Yeah,
and rely,
right.
because otherwise I think oftentimes your team thinks that they have to come to you for all the
Mhm.
answers, and you don't
Yeah,
want that.
yeah, exactly,
The other piece is there's a good chance that your VA or your existing, they can explain it a little bit better.
exactly,
They
exactly.
know where the problem areas are,
Yeah.
and they've been through it, this repetition of how to explain it. So,
Yeah, and
um,
I've explained to her as we go through this process that that is my goal for her eventually, and so for her to keep that in mind, and as we go through these things, if there's things that she thinks could be done differently or explained differently, she's the one doing these processes every day. Like I set them up originally, but she's going to be the one sending out all of our send out cards. She's going to be the one doing all that. So if there's a way we can optimize it, let me know and we'll change it. And like if I'll look at it and be like, oh yeah, she's right, that does make sense. Let's change it for our SOP. And that way we when we bring on the other VA, it'll be a little bit more fine tuned for them.
a big part of growth, of course, is retention.
Yeah,
So, you know, what are you doing, on the retention, piece of it? It's hard to do everything. I'm
yeah,
putting you on the spot here a little
yeah.
bit.
You're good.
And
You're good.
especially when you're early on in the process, you're
Mhm.
thinking growth, growth, growth,
Yeah,
add, and,
yeah.
and
I
not
we
change.
we have some automation set up in the
Yeah.
backside that reach out to them and say, hey, you're 60 days out. Let's our ticket for entry for us to reshop is you fill out this form. I want my clients to have to put something forward for the quote for
Yeah.
the reshop because I can't spend all of my days working on reshops for every client when
No.
there's going to be some who truthfully just don't care. I mean, that's between you know agent to agent. There's a lot of clients who they're going to just let their
Most.
agency ride. They're going to
That's
let their insurance ride, and so that's our ticket for entry is they have to do that form. If they don't, we'll let it ride. Now, obviously, if they don't do the form, they call in. They're like, "Hey, I didn't see that. We'll reshop it
yeah.
for them." But I'm not
Yeah.
reshopping everybody. I
Yeah.
just can't spend the time
No,
doing
you
that.
can't.
And then that's if I'm being like truly honest, that's really it. I mean, we have that set
Yeah.
up and then
That's
we
okay.
reshop it because I had a great call with my buddy Brett Young. And I was super stressed last year about retention because it was going into my second year and it was like, oh, I'm going to start having all these renewals and stuff. And he's like, Maverick, you're going to be a lot better off spending your time right now selling new business than worried
Yeah.
about all this retention, because right now I can outsell any of the loss I'm going to have.
Yeah.
Now, eventually, that's not going to be the case, right? That's not going
Yeah.
to be the case. Eventually, I'm going to have to, switch that gear, and it's going to be retention focused. But right now, we're just not there. We're at a point where I may lose, one or two policies a month. Well, I'm selling more than that every month, and so I'm outselling that retention problem that I'm having.
I think the important thing is you have a process in
Yeah,
place,
yeah.
and you can always build on it.
Hmm.
And if nothing else, they're seeing your name
Yeah,
the end of next year, and
yeah.
they can't say, "I haven't heard from my guy."
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Automation is going to hit them every single time, every renewal. So
Yeah. So let's get into that of your automation. You know, and I think it's huge for um any scratch agent or someone early on into their agency to utilize automation
yeah,
and to utilize tech,
hmm,
because then it doesn't seem like you have a one-person operation.
yeah.
So how are you what are you using, and how are you utilizing your tech?
Yeah, so I actually had Mariah Gates build out
Yeah,
my automation. It's
she's
amazing.
awesome.
I mean, I love it. I tried to do it myself, and one, as an agency owner, I don't have the time to do it, and two, I
Yeah,
know myself, and I'll get too obsessed with it and spend too much time on it. So I was just better off just investing that money and having her do it. And so, like you said, it is important because as a one man shop, I can't be touching all of those clients all the time, or all of those leads, or all those opportunities. And so it's important for me to have that automation. So we had her build it out. I've done some, tweaks here and there for what we want, but yeah, the automation is huge for our agency.
yeah. So what does that look like? So is do you have uh for say a new lead comes in, and maybe you haven't quoted them yet, they've just shown interest, you have texts and emails going out to try to get a hold of them, contact the information.
Yep.
What kind of automation is actually
Yeah,
set
so
up?
we have I don't know right off the
Yeah.
top of my head how many contact points it is, but
Okay.
I know that as they enter, they get a phone call, a text, an email the first day. It triggers me to call them, right? But a lot of these people, a lot of them I'm already talked to when they've entered
Yeah.
in that first new pipeline or the new stage in the pipeline. And so a lot of the times it's more of a I'll hold it off for a day or two. I'll pause those first
Yeah.
couple because I've already talked to them and they need to get me their driver's license number, or they need to get me their son's driver's license number who's off at college, right? And so
Yeah.
it's you hold it off for that, and then if not, then it hits them and says, hey, we're still needing a little bit of information. Do we have time to talk today? It goes out as a text, and
Mm,
and so
nice.
and then the follow up is what's really big, right? Once we actually quote them, it's it's going to follow up
Yeah.
with them and do all that work that I just can't be spending my time doing
Right.
because I have so many other things I have to do. So
That piece there, the follow up is everything
yeah, yeah,
with selling insurance.
hmm,
There has to be follow up, and
yeah,
it's such a strange product. Some Well, very few decide they want to go the next day.
yeah,
Otherwise, it could be 6 months, it could be 8 months. They could wake up and say, "Oh, I need to do this," and it's always today.
yeah.
But yeah, follow up is everything.
It's giant.
And then another piece of that is, I think, which is so important, is the once you do sign up, um, a new client, is to help have that welcome onboarding.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, that's to ask for the reviews,
Yep.
to ask for referrals,
Hmm.
to continue those touch points throughout the
Yeah.
year.
Yeah. And I I actually laugh every time I do this, but one of the automation points in my process is a welcome call, right? And so usually about a month after they sign up, once they bind the policy, we give them a welcome call, and it's always kind of comical to me because those welcome calls are meant for like a office manager or someone. Well, I don't have an office manager. It's me.
Yeah.
I'm the office manager. So I'm still doing the welcome calls as the person who sold you the policy and saying, hey,
Mm,
I know we talked a month ago. I just wanted to let you know that everything's good on our end. All your documents are signed. If you haven't left us a review, please leave us a review. We're talking
mm.
on the phone. And if you need me, I'm here for you. And it may seem like it's not important because you're the person who sold the policy. But I think that setting that precedent now while I'm by myself is important for the future when I have the CSR that's going to be doing those welcome calls for me.
Man, I think that means everything. I
Yeah.
think that goes a long way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, you with these lofty goals, and we talked a little bit off air about, your young family and the
Mhm.
importance of spending time, with your young family. How are you balancing, the new business and your family? It's a
Well,
struggle.
that
Yeah.
is definitely the biggest struggle, the biggest stress every day at my office
Mm.
is knowing that what I'm doing is for my family. I'm investing this time in my agency for my family, but also knowing that the only the only people in my life that are going to remember that I worked late or worked long are my family, and they
Mm.
didn't ask me to do that. My
Yeah.
3-year-old son is not asking me to go to work. He's asking me to stay home and play. And so that work-life balance is huge.
Mm.
And I think that as long as you're having it top of mind and putting effort towards that, that makes a world of difference. It's the scary thing is when you don't think about it, when you're
Yeah.
not thinking about being home with your kids or your wife or whatever you have set up in your life. But that is my number one priority at all times.
Yeah.
And so what that means for me is my days may not look like a traditional agency owner. I may work, you know, 9 to 11, and then I'll go have lunch with my wife, and then I come back and work until 5, and then I go home and hang out with my kids and put them to bed, and then I work from 7 to 3 in the morning, like I've done twice
Yeah.
this week. It's and
Oh,
that's and there's a lot of agents out there doing that. So I'm not saying I'm the only one, but you
yeah.
have to be willing to do that because they're the reason. If they're the reason I'm building this agency and building this business, I can't not pour into them while I'm building the business, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just keep going, man. Like I
Yeah.
said, it is going to pay off, and it won't be too long where you're not going to be staying up till 3 in the morning to
Yeah.
do that. You
Yeah.
won't
Well, I
need to.
appreciate that. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Other than, I mean, I think that's, I started, well, go back to my farmer's days. I mean, I started when my first son was one,
Mhm.
so that was, and I grew I called every night.
Yep.
I mean, I knew I was going to have to, put the work in. But that was a struggle for me.
Mhm.
That was a struggle. I think that's a struggle for all of us. So,
Yeah.
um,
And I think that though I do set lofty goals, I think that knowing that I am young and that I don't have to rush it, I have time to get to where I want to be, lets me feel okay with growing a little bit of a slower pace, right? Than what some other agents might be comfortable with because of the fact that I know that I go home and tuck my kids in bed at night
yeah,
every night. I'm
sweet.
at dinner every night. And
Yeah,
so if that means I grow,
yeah.
if I that means I grow 25% slower than an agent who doesn't do that, that's okay with me. That's okay with me.
Which you're probably not.
No,
I
yeah.
think that's important, man.
Yeah.
What of you're what about, are you 3 years in to your
Yeah, so, I'm 2.5 on
two and
this
a half?
independent
Two and
agency,
a
yeah.
half. Okay,
Yeah,
still pretty
yeah, yeah.
early. What would you say your biggest challenges have been, other than money?
Mm, um, Probably the work-life balance is huge for me.
Yeah,
I mean, we just talked about it, right? But I can't stress enough how much I think about every day that, what I'm doing, is it beneficial for the goals I have, but also beneficial for my family? So that's probably the biggest, and then also just and this is me being blatantly honest, self-doubt, the
mm,
doubt of am I doing the right thing?
mm,
I think I say this every podcast I'm on,
yeah,
but I can sit here and talk to you and I can get pumped up and be like, I love being an insurance agent. I love
yeah,
it. I'm awesome at being an insurance agent. But when it's a Tuesday and I have 40 service tasks I need to do, I don't love being an insurance agent when
yeah,
that's happening. And the self-doubt will creep in very quickly. And you'll be like, man, I could just go work somewhere else and like do something else
yeah,
and be home at 5 and not have to work until 3 tonight. But this is the game we decided to play. And I know that what I'm doing is worth it in the long
yeah,
run. And I know deep in my soul that I'm going to reach the goals that I have set. It may take me longer than it takes other people. It may not, but I'm okay with that because I know that I have the determination to make it there. So it's a weird balance. I tell everyone when I have COI meetings with them, business is interesting. There's highs and lows, right?
yeah,
And you can't get caught in the lows because they're gonna be frequent. If I'm being honest with you,
yeah,
as an agency owner, there's gonna be a lot of lows, and the self doubt of if you're doing it. I think if you have the why, if you know what you're doing, then you're able to pull yourself out of those lows and get back to the high.
Well, I haven't talked to anybody who's really, really had this super smooth path and
No,
just had it. Even those that do, I had you referenced somebody who has an awful lot together, Billy Wagner, who we already referenced. And even when I talked to him, it didn't always look like that.
no, yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, he's an unbelievable planner. And
yeah,
and I mean he puts the thought into it. Well, he had to
mhm,
figure it out too.
yeah, exactly,
He's just this
exactly,
unbelievable, finished product.
yeah.
So
But
you're
and I
right.
think I think that I think that going out of your way, like we talked about earlier, and talking to those guys,
Yeah.
that helps you get out of those lows because they can
Yeah.
tell you, "Oh, Maverick, I was there this year. I went through this, and this is how I got out of it." It may not be completely applicable to your situation, but you might be able to take a nugget of knowledge from them and use it towards getting out of that low point you're at in your agency. Because, like I said, they're gonna come. Like if you think that they're not gonna happen, then you're just mistaken.
But to that, just like every part of your agency step, you need to be intentional about it, which means you have to put it on the calendar
Yeah,
because it's too easy to put aside.
yeah,
I'll tell you where my business really took off was when I really started to be intentional about it. When I
yeah,
really started to work on the business and look at my numbers, as you
hmm,
referenced,
yeah,
when I started to be intentional about growing as a person and as a business owner, when I really started to research, read, listen to podcasts,
yeah,
um, get new ideas. And you know I think a lot of us, and I'm definitely guilty, we're maybe independent, we're driven, we're maybe a little bit stubborn. I can figure it out myself. That's a big problem that I have, and I can have figured out a lot myself. But it sure helps to hear from others. You don't have to reinvent the wheel or to
yeah,
get
definitely.
new ideas.
Yeah, definitely.
So
I think that's really important because it's like I said earlier, if you're a young guy in this industry and there's a lot of guys who have been in it longer than you've even been alive, you'd be stupid not to talk to them
yeah,
because they've been through it. And like you said, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You may need to tweak the wheel. You may
yeah,
need to make a little bit of a
you make it
modification
your own.
for your dream, but
Yeah,
you can take that and improve on it. I steal ideas all the time from people, so
yeah, we all do.
yeah.
But tell me an area where you feel like you really need to improve on.
Uh, Maybe it's just because I've been doing my year planning and stuff, but my time management
Yeah,
needs to be better. And it's because I wear so many hats
yeah.
that it's easy to let things slip through the cracks. But time management is definitely something that I need to improve on. And holding myself accountable because there's no one else to hold me accountable. Obviously, my wife holds me accountable, those type of things. But when I get into my office and I close my door, I don't have a boss coming and checking on me, making sure I'm hitting my KPIs or whatever. It's like it's me. And if
Yeah.
I'm not going to hold myself accountable, then how can I expect myself whenever I have employees to hold them accountable, right? And so that's kind of my goal for this year is just knowing my numbers and holding myself accountable to those numbers.
I think that's a really hard thing, especially when you wear so many hats. And now you're
Yeah,
growing
yeah,
because you're 2.5 years in, you have a book of business. Your call volume's probably getting a little bit higher and your
hmm,
service task requests are getting a little bit higher.
yeah, definitely,
And you do have a VA, but you have to, work with them and communicate with them too.
yeah,
I know you know what time blocking is, and it's important to do that. It's important to have a plan,
yeah,
but it always changes. Something comes up and that your priorities constantly change throughout the day.
yeah,
So that's one it's very difficult, but it's something you have to be as disciplined as possible. You're not going to have the perfect day,
no.
you know, not in this
But
business. It changes.
I think striving for that is very
Yeah,
important,
you
right?
have to keep planning. Yeah,
Because if you don't plan it, then nothing's going to happen. And I saw that last year. I set a lofty goal. I didn't really have that great of a foundational plan. I've been just selling. Leads have been coming in. I'll reach the goal, but I didn't. And I had to have the tough conversation with myself and say, why didn't I reach that goal? Okay, well, this is why. You didn't do
yeah.
this. You didn't do that. Well, how do we prove that this year? So
Awful tough year too.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
that's the
yeah,
factor,
definitely.
right? I,
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
never want to make excuses,
yeah,
but I mean, it's a challenge. It's the most challenging year I've ever seen.
yeah.
So
And there's some hope in that as well. I think that
yeah.
whenever if you can make it through this year, you'll be pretty golden, right? I got
Well,
my very first year in insurance was 2020. I mean, that was COVID. And
Yeah.
so I remember telling myself, which obviously didn't really affect our industry, at least not for myself.
No.
I was green, right? I was brand new, so I
Yeah.
didn't know. But I kept telling myself that if the world shut down and I can run this business and get started and make money, I probably can do it in any other time when I can
Yeah.
start going and meeting people in person and networking and all those things. And so I kind of kept that same mindset this year. Like, yeah, I didn't reach my goal, but I grew. I know I didn't lose, so I
Yeah.
had growth this year, right? And I think that it was really important to set processes up during this time because those
Yeah.
of us who do that during these hard markets, when we come out on the other side, we're going to be in a really good spot.
Yeah. The beauty of it too is with the leads that you're generating, even if this is the amount of leads that you're generating, even though, and I believe that 2024 is going to be a difficult year as well, maybe very similar,
Yeah.
but you still have all these people that you can, when things do loosen up, and they
Yep.
will, you have that pipeline to
Yeah.
circle back on.
Yeah. My smart cycle pipeline is full in agency
Yeah.
Zoom. I tell every single person when I tell them, I'll be the first one to tell you that we're not a great spot for you. Hey, the option you have right now is going to be better. But I promise you one thing, I'm going to be calling you in 12 months to rerun your rates. You will get a call from me again, so.
Well, lead generation, without that, you would never, you can't survive.
Yeah,
So that's
exactly.
number one. Everything else you can kind of figure out. So you got
Mhm.
that. I always tell people that want to get into this business, or want to become a producer. If you can generate leads, you're going to be successful.
Yep,
That's all you need. We have the products to be able to sell.
exactly.
So you have that down pat.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah, it is.
so we covered Maverick a little bit. Last question for you. Looking at Bison Ridge
Mhm.
as a business,
Yeah.
what would you like to see Bison Ridge improve on in 2024 as a whole, as a business?
Yeah, so I mean, like I said it 4 or 5 times now, but hitting my KPIs, I think that
Mm,
if I hit my KPIs and hit the numbers that I've broke down for me,
yeah,
I'll reach the goals inevitably, right? Because
yeah,
I took the goal that I have, I broke it down monthly, I broke it down daily. Well, if I hit the daily goal, then I hit the monthly goal. If I hit the monthly goal, then I hit my annual goal. That's just how the numbers work. And
yeah,
so I think that staying the course in those harder times is what Bison Ridge is going to do this year. We're going to keep providing amazing service for our clients, and so it's just another year of growth, another year of learning, and I'm excited for it. So
yeah. I'm looking forward to staying connected.
definitely.
I had one other thing I just thought of. Um, Back to the family piece of it. Um, what, how does your wife feel about this
About
business that you're
about the
in?
business? Well,
Yeah.
we're at a point now where we're starting to see some money come in, so
Okay.
she's happy about it. There was some tough conversations those first,
Yeah.
year and a half or so. I mean, real tough conversations. And there's no other accountability call like going home to your wife and her saying, "Hey, how many policies did you sell today?"
Oh man.
Yeah, and you're sitting in the kitchen like, "Oh, what am I'm not gonna lie to her, she's my wife, right?"
Yeah.
And so, I talk to I'm in a couple masterminds, I get a couple accountability calls every week with different agents, and I say, "Guys, I love talking to you guys, but my wife is the number one accountability call because she's the person who sees the money in the bank account, right?" So
Yeah.
she's extremely grateful. She is my number one supporter no matter what,
Mm,
right? She knows that if I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And we may have bumps in the road. We may say we're going to do it in 24 months, and it may take us 36 or whatever that is. But if I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And I think that her having blind faith in me those first couple months, and now me putting some truth into it, and her seeing it,
yeah.
she's like, okay, he's going to do what he's saying.
Yeah.
So it's extremely a blessing because I could not do it without her.
Yeah.
That's 100% true because she holds down the fort, and so it's one of those things that she's amazing. But yeah, there's tough conversations, tough. I mean,
From
and
there,
go ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say the conversations are good though because, like I said, when I close my door in my office, I don't have anyone accountable. But when I walk out of that door and go home, she's gonna hold me to accountability, and that's something that we really turned up last year, and I think that's why we saw the growth we did. Is I was very transparent with her what I wanted my Bison Ridge goals to be.
Mm,
We wrote them down. We have a
yeah.
weekly meeting on Sundays when we put the kids to bed. We sit down and we talk. And she says, "Hey, did you do this week? Did you do what you said you were going to do this week?" And if I say no,
Yeah.
then we say, "Well, why didn't I do it? What do I need to do better?" And if you say yes, then heck yeah, let's move on to the next one. So
You know, uh, Putting yourself in their shoes, your spouse takes this
Yeah.
on this, big challenge. You don't know.
Yeah.
She sees you believe in it. At the same time, you took home $100 a month.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
so you have a young family to support. So it's a lot of stress.
Yeah.
So,
Extreme.
but
I think
but
that
you
I think that I tell people all the time, I think we were just naive enough to not know the risk we were taking when we started. Just naive and brave enough to do it. I say naive because when you're starting a business, I didn't know what
yeah,
was going to hold. I mean, of course, you're full of dreams and
yeah,
aspirations. And you're like, I'm going to do it. Well, we've already talked about there's going to be bumps in the road, and you don't foresee those bumps coming.
yeah.
And so we were naive enough to look past those bumps and see the light at the end of the tunnel and say, I think we can make it there. We'll figure it out. And so I'm extremely grateful that she has trusted me and is going to continue trusting me as we grow this business and make it really big. Is the plan. So
Well, you're getting there. You're making your progress. I think you're way ahead.
I appreciate that.
Of anybody that's of somebody that's 2.5 years in. So it's coming.
Yeah.
It's going to get from that perspective easier and easier. There's still going to be you'll find you have different problems, but if
Yeah.
you can be a little more financially secure, you can take care of the
Yeah,
rest.
that definitely
Make sure.
getting some renewals definitely helps with that. I
Yeah.
would say if you can make it to that, that's very helpful. So
Hey, had a blast
definitely.
talking with you. So thank you very much for being on today. Everyone else, thanks for listening to another episode of the Agents to Owners podcast. And we'll see you next week.